I'm Hannah Weiss, the Education Manager at the Science Museum of Western Virginia, and this is your moment of STEM. And this week, we're going to talk about Snow's map. So Snow's map is one of my favorite stories in biology. And what Snow's map is the story of a cholera outbreak in London in the 1850s. So today, we know cholera to be a bacterial infection that's waterborne. It kind of spreads through water. And it's one that causes, let's say, really severe intestinal distress. Actually, intestinal distress to the degree of a lot of the deaths are due to dehydration. But at the time, the leading medical thought was that cholera was caused by a miasma, foul or bad air. Also, in London in the 1850s, hygiene was really different. A lot of wastewater and other things were kind of just thrown into the River Thames. And there were cesspools or cesspits kind of all over the place that were used for a lot of the same thing. Water was also kind of difficult to get in London in the 1850s. It wasn't something that you could just go into your house and turn on the faucet. If you wanted water, you had to get it from one of a number of public pumps or taps, which would let you get some water and you could even keep it or store it. So this was the scene that Dr. John Snow came into in London in the 1850s when this cholera outbreak happened. And he had a different idea about cholera. He did not think it was caused by a miasma. He actually thought it was caused by a contaminant in the water. And he collected evidence. He kind of interviewed people and figured out where all the cases were and put it on a map. He physically mapped the location of all of these people who were affected and used that to kind of show and track down where this contaminated water source was. And a lot of the techniques that he used, talking to people and talking to their families and the people who were affected, are things that are still used. He was able to track down all of the cases, and using that on a map, which he physically figured out where the location was, he determined that this contaminated source was actually the Broad Street pump. And in doing this, he even found some really cool to history stories. For example, there was a woman who lived very far away from the Broad Street pump. It wasn't the closest pump to her. And she got cholera. And through talking to her relations, Dr. John Snow actually found out that she really liked the taste of the water from the Broad Street pump. And she had it brought to her once a week. That's how she ended up with cholera. There was also a local brewery or brew house where you would think, because of their location, all of the workers should have been affected, but actually none of them were. And Dr. John Snow found out by talking to all of these people that, well, they weren't drinking the water from that pump. They were either using their product, they were drinking the beer they were making, or from a pump that wasn't on a map or on the list that he was using. By physically figuring out where all these people were and using that to kind of backtrack to the location, he was positive, absolutely positive, that the Broad Street pump was the source of his contamination. Unfortunately, he actually wasn't able to convince the other medical professionals in London that it was caused by water. But Dr. John Snow did convince them to try an experiment, to remove the pump handle so no one could use the pump. And when he did that, the cases trickled down to pretty much a stop. He was able to stop this epidemic, this outbreak, in its track, just by talking to people and figuring out what they were doing in their everyday lives. And the techniques that he used are things that people still use in epidemiology when they're studying health risks and their outbreak, kind of how they're spreading. So disease spread. Epidemiologists still use a lot of those techniques. Snow's map is one of my favorite stories in biology. And if you'd like to find out more about it, or even see some of his data, you can check out the links below. I'm Hannah Weiss from the Science Museum of Western Virginia, and I can't believe I got through that whole thing without making a Game of Thrones reference.